This is the part I've been waiting for a long time. This has been planned for a long time, and this day's been coming for about 8 years now. So I'm going to give you some backdrop. Keep your Slido app handy if you have questions or comments, things that you want to submit. You can do that either, like Renee said, you can do it by name or you can do it anonymously, so keep that handy. So let me rewind the clock to 2017, I believe. I met a group of folks in the Knoxville area. I had gone to Knoxville originally to put together what should have been a 2 or 3 week deal for a real estate investor, kind of my wheelhouse. I enjoy working with business owners. I enjoy the real estate marketplace. So we had gone there for that. Initially, it should have taken a couple weeks, and I ended up driving to Knoxville every week, pretty much. Maybe I missed a week here and there, but every week for the next 3 years. Okay, the market was that good. We had that much going on, but the number one reason for that, 2 reasons really, both sitting in the room. First one, Mark, wherever Mark went to. Mark Knight has been my right hand. Mark is the brains of the organization. Mark has been instrumental in the organization of things. He was our first original staff member. So Mark, just so those of y'all that are new know, every application that comes through Wellington, Mark goes on the application for 10%. And after you've experienced that for a little bit, you're going to be, thank you, I needed that. That's the best 10% I'll ever spend, okay? Because he takes care of everything behind the scenes. Not only does Mark do that, but Mark does your delivery for you. So the client, when the client comes and Emeritus, let's say, is ready to issue a contract, then Mark does the delivery for you. So Mark works closely with Jerome Marcourt. Jerome and Mark are in concert on these things, do lots of things to help keep everything going. So a big part of everything that happened with Knoxville is Mark Knight. And a big part of putting this event together has been Mark Knight. And a big part of even why we're still, not only are we still humming along, but y'all, we have tremendous momentum. I'm going to tell you about that here in a moment. But all that, much of that is due to Mark Knight. So would y'all give him a hand? The second person in the room is Kevin Jarday. Kevin was my original partner. He and I got together. We really still partner, but he and I got together originally. He had no background in infinite banking. He did have a background in health insurance. And so he and I got together, and he owns a very successful company in Knoxville called InstaDrive. They do foundation repair, mold remediation, high-level stuff for your home or your business, where you need a professional to come in. That's what they do. They've got all the equipment, they've got the crews and the people to come do that. So he took that company from a failing company to a multi-million-dollar company, just did an amazing job. He opened his home to me. He let some strange guy that he had never met before come and stay there with him, so I didn't have to rent a hotel every week when I was in Knoxville. And he has become my absolute brother. I love him to death. So I appreciate you, my friend. So y'all give Kevin a hand. Hannah, those of y'all have seen earlier, has become my executive assistant, and where there are 2 different types of staff people we have at Wellington. We have administrative assistants. Those are the kind of people that help you with a lot of the busy work, the emails, the phone calls, those kinds of things. They're important, no doubt about it. The administrative staff is important. That's not, however, what Hannah does. Hannah is an executive assistant, which means she drives profitability. So for those of you that are looking to expand your practice, you'll learn if you read Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How, you need a who, right? And Hannah has become my who, my go-to person for getting things done. She's excellent at organization. She's very composed. Y'all, many of you, when you're trying to get to me, you go through Hannah first now. Thank you for that, Hannah. anything that you need while you're here or beyond that in the Wellington practice, make sure that you have Hannah's information. It's in your packet. So if y'all would please give Hannah a hand for helping me. And most importantly, Renee has come on board. She's our newest staff member. Renee is our new CFO. She's our Chief Financial Officer. So Renee is probably the most important person in the room because she controls the money. So when you need a bonus, when you need an increase in your pay, when you need something paid for, when you need a marketing campaign, Renee is going to be the one that kind of opens the door and says yes or no. She tells me yes or no to what we can afford and what we can buy. So her and Mark work closely together. So when there's something coming up, Mark's been with me from the beginning, so Mark understands the ins and outs of it. And so Renee and Mark work closely together. So lastly, please recognize Renee. Thank her. So this is me. April 4th of 2004. God called me to plant churches. And so I began down that path and was very motivated. Anything I do, I try to do to the nth degree, right? So started down that path and absolutely loved it. God was blessing. We had God's favor. He really did some things for us that we couldn't have done on our own. So we knew it. And my family participated in that. My kids, Zach and Britt, who are here today, they were a big part of that. My younger two kids, they were younger at the time, but my whole family went through that. And if any of you have done something that's like for a foundation or for a charity or for a church, you know your whole family's involved, right? They're all supporting you in that effort. So they did. So my plan was for the rest of my life to be on that path. I had the perfect church, the perfect staff, trained all the elders myself, absolutely loved it, and I threw it all away. I had a moral failure because of a separation in my own marriage, and so I went down a path that, looking back, it's hard to believe that it even happened, but it did, and I'm responsible. I'd like to say I could blame it on somebody else, but it was just me. And so I took a precious gift that God had given me and threw it away. So I knew for a long time after that, depression, absolutely suicidal, the bottom of the barrel for me. I didn't think there was any reason to go on. And all my kids, my family members, people close to me, they all kind of went through that with us, you know. And my kids didn't ask for that. The people that love me, my family members, they didn't ask for that. They didn't ask to be drugged through the junk of a very public problem. But they went through it anyway. And so as a result of that, I was convinced that, you know, this is it for me. There's no hope, no going beyond this. How do you recover from this? God had called me to plant churches, and here I am. So I continued. I'd kept about 25, 30 clients with me from the very beginning, which was 1994. I wrote my first contract in 94. And so since that time, most of, you know, my kids and the things that they had when they were young, most of that came from the insurance world. So I kept those clients with me during that time, even the time when I was pastoring and planting churches and teaching and doing that kind of thing. And so when I exited the ministry, I naturally just went back into financial services, which I had really had since 1994 anyway. You with me? So kind of a weird track. I'm the Bible guy and the banking guy. So a weird mix. But so anyway, I come back into that. I was attached in 2010 9 to Nelson Nash. First time I met Nelson was absolutely amazing. I was really taken with this guy. You guys have heard me tell the story. The first time I met him, I really thought this is a charming older guy. You know, he maybe needs the inspiration or spark of a young stallion like myself, somebody that's so sophisticated and knowledgeable about money, you know. And so I sat down with Nelson, and it took about 30 seconds to learn I was the student. He was definitely the teacher. And so he shared, you know, he asked me 2 questions. The first question was, he probably saw right through the hubris and the arrogance, and success is a funny thing. When you're successful, it kind of does funny things to you. The biggest risk some people face is not failure, it's success, right? So anyway, when I sat down with Nelson, he asked me 2 questions. The first question was, how does money, or what is money? And I thought, well, that's a pretty basic question. What is money? You know, so I stammered around for a little bit to try to come up with medium of exchange, and it's a way that you buy and sell. It's how we do business. It's commerce, you know. And so he has this look on his face. He said, well, if you couldn't answer that question, you sure won't be able to answer the second question. And so I said, okay, Nelson, what's the second question? The second question was, how does it work? And I realized I didn't really know. I mean, I just thought the whole goal was to accumulate as much as you can, take care of the people around you, and then you fade off into the sunset. I didn't know how money worked. And most of the people in the United States have no idea how money works. They don't know how to leverage it. They don't know where they're at risk. They don't understand about their own personal economy. They just don't understand it. And so the privilege that you and I have, if you join me in this, is to educate people on how money works. So our big drive, what we're after, is to make an impact, to make a difference. I hate using the word impact because it's so overused. Everybody says impact, you know. But I don't know of a better word. We want to make a difference. We want to make a dent on the globe. Like I said earlier, you don't take any of this stuff with you, right? So when you make a paycheck, if you got a big fat income, some of the people that we recognized earlier today have made a lot of money with Wellington over the last year, but you can't take that with you, right? So if you're not doing something good with money, then really, what's the use? So after meeting Nelson, I became what was called a syndicate maker, and that's an individual. There were only 4 of us at the time. There's 5 now. Those 4 individuals were trained in how you could assemble a group of people that were all had banking whole life policies. Now give me some latitude for a second. That's not a technical name. That's Scott's practical name, because there's really only 2 different types of insurance in the life insurance world. There's term and there's whole life. Now there's this thing called universal life, but that's really just term with a cash value component. Really, they're both term. It's really still term insurance. Okay, so when it comes to whole life, there's a guy by the name of Dave Ramsey, who everybody in here's probably heard or followed or went to his Financial Peace University classes, things like that. But he will teach that whole life is a terrible place. In fact, he doesn't call it cash value. He calls it trash value, right? So on one broadcast, he made the statement, run, don't walk, to cancel your trash value life insurance. Talk about hubris. So the mistake was people listened. Dave Ramsey. So they listened to him. So many of them ended up canceling their contracts, their insurance policies, many of them they'd had for decades. And then guess what happened when they went and applied and tried to get other coverage? They were uninsurable. They had a health issue. So the next thing to come on the scene was a class action lawsuit. So most whole life plans in the workplace are not great. They're very expensive. They're not very efficient. They don't build very well. So they're not great. There are only 7 companies that manufacture what's called a banking whole life. And that's my phrase, y'all. It's not, again, not a technical term, but a banking whole life is an account, as the name implies, that can be set aside and used for the purpose of banking. So money going in this week, coming out next week. I got to buy a car. The worst thing I could do is pay cash for the car, because then I just self-financed, right? Or even worse than that is me going to Ford Motor Credit, because then they're financing it, right? What I should do is I should take that. How much you have to pay for a car today? $40,000, okay? So I should take that $40,000 and put it in an IBC account, then turn around, take a policy loan, I'll talk more about this later, and go buy the car. Then you capture the interest. You never have lost opportunity cost. You never lose the interest. You become your own bank, because every time money moves, banks make money, right? So we want to put you in that same place where you're that person. So 20 years ago, next week, is when God called me to plant churches. And I already shared with you how I thought that was hopeless. A few months ago, God revealed it's not. We're about to plant churches, but not the typical kind of church. This is going to be a different kind of gathering of people, right? Because that's all a church is. It's a gathering of people. So I don't care. It doesn't matter if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, if you're Muslim, Jewish, it doesn't matter. Whatever, or no faith system at all. Doesn't matter. What we're talking about is a gathering of people who unite for a common cause. The gathering of people that I'm talking about are clients who have banking whole life policies. Enter syndicate maker. So I have the software, the approval, the certification, the network to bring policyholders together. So if, like for instance, if I have a whole life policy and it's got $100,000 of cash in it, I'm limited to $100,000. That's all that's in it. So if I want to go buy a house and the house is $400,000, I can't do that. Nelson said, don't do business with banks. It's one of his 5 rules of banking. So I just violated the rule because I didn't have enough money in a private network. But when I bring together clients, or I help you be the syndicator, when we bring together clients, then you now have the capacity in a private banking network to buy a $400,000 house, even if you only have $100,000 in your cash value. Got me? It expands your capacity to do this. Okay? So we have a plan. As a practitioner myself, like Mark said, I'd like for all of y'all to become practitioners. I believe you should. You benefit tremendously from doing that. Wellington's at a unique spot now. We have a track to run on for how to open offices. This is where you come in. Brick and mortar offices across the nation. We have a staff to support it now, and we have funding. For the first time ever, I have a private investor if we want to use them. I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet because I think we can do it. Wellington can do it ourselves right now. And I've never given up part of the equity or the ownership of the company, and I'm not sure I want to do that yet. Really, that's going to be my immediate family's decision because it's going to be theirs one day. I'm not going to be here. So, but we have the funding to do this. So let me tell you a little bit about what that looks like. Mark mentioned a couple of cities. Phoenix and Austin. Both those are places where we either have an active advisor or we have somebody that's about to become active or newer folks that are getting started. So if we go into a region where you are, we want to establish one per state, except for New York. We have problems with New York, but every other state we can do. We want to establish a brick and mortar office that you and your other advisors, staff. And we're going to put the money behind it to lease it for the first 2 years. We have money and a business plan allocated to do just that. So you're going to have a brick and mortar office. You'll be able to come into that. And there are some things I'm going to talk to you about that needs to happen. But we're going to set this up to where you can actually do it. You can participate in it. And there's going to be a marketing campaign behind it that's going to promote you. Not me, but you. You with me so far? Okay, so the reason behind this is we want to be able to give things away that to families that would not otherwise have access to this. I've had people say to me, well, Scott, infinite banking is just for rich people. It's for the wealthy. That's not true, y'all. If Nelson were here today, he would tell you that's not true. In fact, the person that he gives you an example of in the BYOB book, the Becoming Your Own Banker book, is a guy that makes $28,000 a year. That's his example in the book, okay? So don't think that they have to be wealthy. However, most people don't have access to you or to me unless they have more assets. So it's the people that have a little bit more money, because they won't even have a conversation. They disregard themselves. They disqualify themselves before we ever have a conversation, right? So they never approach us. We never have the communication with us because they don't think it's possible. They don't think they have enough money to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to fund a 2-day seminar for 10 families per advisor that you designate. So we'll either do the promotional campaign for you to identify those 10 at-risk families. That's what behind the scenes we're going to call it. We're not calling that publicly, obviously, but we're talking about families that could not otherwise do this. We're going to put them up at a nice resort. It's going to be 2 days. All expenses are going to be paid. We want to do it local so we don't have to cover the transportation, but everything else we're going to cover. In other words, we're going to pay for their hotel room or whatever at the resort. We're going to pay for all their meals. We're going to pay for 2 like engaging, fun activities. You're going to be kind of the tour guide. You're going to be directed traffic. So half the day is going to be educational. Half the day is going to be pure fun. So many times these people would not have the resources to do that until you. Now you're going to make those resources available. You're going to be promoted in the community, your community, Austin. You'll be promoted as the advisor that does those resort getaways for middle-income families. You're the advisor that does that. Word will spread about that, trust me, especially when we help it a little bit through social media and other things that we're going to do. So you'll be established as that person that brings in 10 families once per quarter. So every advisor gets 10 families once a quarter. Now to get there, there's some requirements, some things I have to have you do. It takes 3 advisors per office. So you can't do it by yourself unless you're a Keith Hatchett. Keith could do it by himself. But most people is going to require 3. So if you have 3 advisors and 33 clients per advisor, that gives me the room financially to fund the first 2 years of rent or lease for the office, a staff person for the front, for you, your staff person, and to take care of these quarterly events. It takes 33 clients per advisor to do that. Make sense? Once we have that, and we're factoring in a normal size case, not $100,000 cases, right? So 10 at-risk families per quarter. So that's what you gain from this. Now let me back up one. So the possibilities when successful. A lot of y'all, let's just see if we can just be honest and open for a second. I've been very honest with you this morning. I wrestled with what I was going to say. I knew family members were going to be here. People that love me are going to be here. I didn't want to embarrass them. I didn't want to hurt them. They've been through enough crap in their life because of me. So I didn't want to do that, right? I didn't want to pile on. So I had to think about it. And so I had it all polished up. I changed it as recently as the day before yesterday. And I took out all the bad stuff. I was going to make it sterile, you know, but it wouldn't have been true. What I told you this morning was the truth. The shameful, embarrassing truth. So what's at risk is if you and I don't partner to do this, then most of these families I'm talking about would never have access to this information. We're talking about, we're going to come in, we'll bring a staff in, you'll be a key part of that, but our staff's going to come in power, in force, right? We're going to show up on the scene and we're going to take care of the teaching side of it. We're going to do the seminar for them. So we want to have these seminars planned all across the country. So our goal is to have one of these per quarter at your office. Initially, we'd like to set up one office per state. We've already got an office operational in Greenville. We've already got an office operational in Knoxville. So this would be the next step beyond that. So there are lots of different places we're looking at, but we're excited and want to do this. Then we're going to put the promotional campaign behind you being that person that helps people who could not help themselves. And you're doing it with the expectation of nothing in return. So when we do these seminars, they are not sales seminars. So we're not getting them in and giving them, 3 different choices they can make, high, medium, or low, and trying to rope them in and grab their wallet as they're on their way out the door. We're not doing that. These are going to be educational seminars. They have to be legally, okay? For our plan to work, they have to be educational. And what that means is we're going to train them. We're going to teach them the core tenets of privatized banking. We're going to do what my mentor did. He wanted to build the 10%. He believed that if we had 10% of the United States population that were privatizing money, not doing business with banks, not living over their skis financially, not living with a load of debt, not financing everything they ever did, but if they lived responsibly according to the sound money principle, my mentor believed 10% was the magic number that would swing public opinion to the degree that it had a legislative effect. The goal was to impact Congress. So that's the whole thing that Nelson was after in building the 10%. In fact, if you see lots of practitioners in their signature on their email, they'll say building the 10%. That's where that number comes from. So when you're successful, you're going to have these individuals, these at-risk families that are going to have financial literacy that would not have been possible without you. Most of these people rule themselves out. And if you were to have an honest conversation with them, they would tell you they have very little hope. Now they avoid it, stick their head in the sand and act like things are just going to go away, but they're not hopeful. They're not optimistic. And so the result is family splinter. The number one cause of divorce in the United States is financial. So you'll never have a husband being the husband he should be if they're not responsible with money. Think about what the average husband, there's some husbands here today, think about what your life would be like if your financial strain was gone. If you lived a very, Nelson used to say he had 49 individual contracts at one point in time. Nelson did. And so he used to say, this is a very simple, stress-free way to live. Tranquility, right? That's the way Nelson lived. He lived a pretty simple life, but that was his thing. Imagine what you could do for marriages, husbands and wives. Imagine what you could do for parents, the way you parent your kids. I can tell you, my kids had to deal with a lot of crap because their dad was stressed out about stuff, right? Mainly finances. So imagine what would happen to a family, to a dad, to a mama, grandmas and grandpas. Imagine what happens to the continuity, the health of the family when you step in as a resource and you treat them like queens. And by the way, I hope you feel this way. Wellington, our philosophy is white glove service. We wanted to make you feel special because you are special to us. And so the same thing you guys are experiencing, you're getting a microcosm of what we want to do for these families. So, be honest, how many of y'all know families that wouldn't have the money to come here and do this? Do you know families like this? Well, how amazing would it be for you to infuse hope into their family? Infuse hope by saying, we're going to treat you. You don't have to worry about anything. You get to the resort, drive there, that's all you got to do. We're taking care of you. We'll have people there to carry their bags inside. They won't lift a finger for the time that they're there. You're going to treat them like royalty. And one of the things they're going to do is they're going to see my life can be different. And if someone really has hope, it changes everything. One of the other things that's going to happen is there'll be a $100 million umbrella that you built. Now think about this. Somebody give me a town where you live. Give me one. Say again? Pensacola. Okay, so Gabe, think about Pensacola. Let's say in Pensacola, Florida, that you could have enough clients practicing infinite banking that you build $100 million of death benefit over that community. Could he do that? Of course he can. The miracle of life insurance is they give us a check for $100, we give them a $100,000 death benefit. You know what I mean? So yes, of course you can. That's why you heard people talking about Hatchet, $25 million in death benefit. And that was in 11 months. So I mean, you could do this. You could build an umbrella of protection over your community. And the protection that we're talking about, I'm going to go into this more in my next talk, But the protection we're talking about is not just a death benefit, it's living benefits. It's cash you're infusing into their marketplace, into their lives. So you're taking care of their financing system. You're going to help them. You're going to be the contact person, not for just setting up an IBC account. You're going to be the contact person for when they need to buy a car, because you're the financial expert in their community. They'll come to you. They got to buy a house, right? Tammy? They're going to come to you. Say, I need somebody with real estate. Teach me about this. They'll come to you for all those things. So you'll be the one establishing, Gabe, this $100 million umbrella of protection over your community. Okay, so this is what I just shared with you a little bit ago. It's a 2-day educational retreat. That's the way it has to be promoted, and that actually has to be what it is. There's no bait and switch. They're going to be educated. Our goal is to position you as an advisor. Now, what's going to happen when 10 families show up and you walk them through this? You're going to have some that are naturally going to want to be clients. Okay, that will be the end result of this, but that's not the aim. We're not trying to manipulate. That's not it. And if you have the attitude of saying, if you get commission breath and say, man, bills got to be paid, my mortgage has got to be paid, college has got to be paid for, I'm stressed out, I've only got one stinking appointment this week because I don't believe in prospecting, so when I go see that one appointment, I have to sell them. It's called commission breath, right? And everybody smells it. When you're desperate and you don't have enough prospecting work going in, and you've only got one appointment that week, of course you got to make that happen, right? So that's not what we're going to do. We're going to actually set this up. And by the way, this also fills one of your greatest needs you'll ever have as an advisor. Jerome, probably their greatest need, prospecting, right? Having enough people to see under a favorable basis. How different would it be for you to say, instead of saying, now don't do this, exaggerating, Mr. Jones, I'm the new life insurance lady in town. I'd like you to buy some life insurance, Instead of having that approach to saying, we sponsor families to come to a 2-day educational retreat. We pay all the expenses. I'd like you to be my guest. Isn't that an easier conversation, right? You invite them to come. They show up, and again, you're going to have, we're going to come in, your hired guns are going to come in and do these seminars for you. You'll have a role in that also. But then we'll come in and we'll educate them about what it takes to set these accounts up. You become the go-to resource. You're a hometown hero. Prospects start coming to you. What's at risk if we fail? It's important to you to know what are you going to gain if we're successful, what's at risk if we fail. If we fail, then the status quo kind of continues. An apathetic kind of financial misery permeates middle-income America. Not upper-income America, but middle-income America are stressed out. They can't make their bills. They're living from paycheck to paycheck. Right now, credit card debt is skyrocketing because we're living on credit. So if we fail, and I need you for this to work, we need you. You can pool a group of clients together that can pool their cash values, not technically, they keep their own cash, okay? But I'll explain that more to you later. That's a little bit more advanced. But all their different accounts would come together. We'll set you up with a coordinator. They'll coordinate that. So when somebody only has $100,000 of cash value, but they need to buy a $400,000 house, we'll help you do that, right? So it allows you to be that person that allows them to do this. If we fail, the misery continues. And y'all, I'll submit to you, I don't think it continues. I think it gets worse. I think we're in a situation right now economically in the United States where things are headed in a bad direction. We are more separated, red and blue, Republican, Democrat. We are more separated than we've ever been before. And now it's not, well, I disagree with you, Lawrence. Lawrence wouldn't say to me today, well, Scott, I disagree. He would say, Scott, you're evil, right? Because that's where it is today. You can't have a disagreement. One person's got to be evil and the other person's got to be good, right? So I think that continues, right? And it gets worse. That's what happens if we fail. Marriages will dissolve. Who, Scott? We have no way of knowing that. Only God knows that. But I can tell you, if we don't do this, there will be families that splinter apart. There will be families that don't have access to this information. There will be families who don't have the health, the hope that infuses life in their family life. They won't have that, right? I think that's what's at stake. Less freedom, less hope.